While John F. Kennedy was working hard to stop Israel from developing nuclear weapons, the chief of counterintelligence at the CIA at the time was doing the exact opposite, covertly assisting the Israeli Mossad in their nuclear weapon development. James Jesus Angleton, also known as Jim, was the well-known CIA officer who led the agency's counterintelligence staff from the early 1950s until 1974. A Wall Street Journal article published May 22, 1987 states, Angleton almost single-handedly ran the Israeli account at the CIA until 1974, when he was forced out by new CIA Director William Colby. Mr. Angleton was instrumental in dramatically strengthening U.S.-Israeli intelligence cooperation in a host of areas. It was even suspected that Mr. Angleton's extraordinarily close relationship to the Mossad was one reason Mr. Colby wanted him out. Here's a partly declassified 1986 news article titled The Israeli Account. Keep in mind, this is a sanitized copy, meaning parts of it may have been removed or manipulated. U.S. security concerns date back to the very beginning of the CIA's relationship with Israel. For almost 25 years, that relationship came under the aegis of James Jesus Angleton. Working with the Jewish underground, he helped Jewish refugees immigrate to Palestine. Those efforts would give him special stature among Israelis for years to come. The Israeli account quickly became a separate, forbidden territory to those who did not work on it at the CIA. It may not have always been so. For a time, the work of the staff handling Israeli operations was out in the open, just like that involving any other country. One day, however, staff members arrived at CIA headquarters to find that their files, their desks, and everything else had vanished, and that they were to be transferred to other sections. Only later did they learn, according to the story, that Angleton had taken over. Secrecy was the essence of the Israeli account. By its nature, Angleton's counterintelligence staff was one of the CIA's most secretive components. Adding to the secrecy, Angleton held the Israeli account, quote, in his hip pocket. Keep in mind that even after the new CIA director, William Colby, forced Angleton to resign in 1974, Israeli Mossad agents would still visit Angleton at his suburban Virginia home, and they dined with him at local Chinese restaurants. This is also why, after his death, former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin stated, "He was a friend you could trust on a personal basis. He was the biggest Zionist of the lot." Yitzhak Rabin was also in Dallas the day JFK was assassinated. He actually submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the National Archives last year regarding this visit. Just hours prior to JFK being assassinated, Yitzhak Rabin abruptly cut his trip short. I actually made a full video on that last year. If you scroll down on any of my socials, you'll be able to find it. Anyway, back to Angleton. His relationship with the Israeli Mossad caused tension with others in the CIA. In a heated conversation during the 1956 Suez Canal crisis, CIA Deputy Director Robert Amory explained to the CIA Director Alan Dulles at the time, stated either you trust my people and me, or you trust this co-opted Israeli agent. His loyalty to Israel was most obvious when it came to Israel's nuclear weapons development. For context, at the time, John F. Kennedy's administration was adamant about making sure that Israel does not develop nuclear weapons. Now known as the Battle of the Letters, there was a series of very intense dialogue at the time between John F. Kennedy and Israel's Prime Ministers David Ben-Gurion and subsequently Levi Eshkol. This led to John F. Kennedy sending Israel a letter of ultimatum on July 4th, 1963, stating, "This government's commitment to and support of Israel could be seriously jeopardized if it should be thought that we were unable to obtain reliable information on a subject as vital to peace as the question of Israel's efforts in the nuclear field." Israel's Prime Minister at the time, Levi Eshkol, responded to that statement specifically stating that it caused him, quote, surprise. He said, searching for the right word. Israel would do what it had to do for its national security and to safeguard its sovereign rights. Unbeknownst to John F. Kennedy, while he was trying to stop Israel from developing nuclear weapons, James Angleton and others at the CIA were already working with the Israeli Mossad, aiding them in developing their nuclear weapons program. This 1975 transcript comes from the already released JFK files. Investigative journalist Tad Schultz gave a testimony in June of 1975. Schultz stated, "I was told by one of my news sources that a situation had occurred in the 1960s in which the CIA delivered to the Israeli government classified material, technical knowledge, know-how, the service of distinguished physicists, and fissionable material in the form of plutonium to assist in the development of an Israeli nuclear weapon at the Dimona Israeli nuclear testing grounds." Schultz stated, "I have raised the subject in a private conversation with Mr. James Angleton in the spring of this year. Mr. Angleton told me that essentially this information was correct. Original information was indeed the counterintelligence, the CI division of the Central Intelligence Agency, which was then headed by Mr. Angleton, was the unit in the CIA responsible for this nuclear operation." After he was asked further details, however, he did give two correct corrections. One, that the time frame was wrong, that it was not in the early 60s, but indeed in the late 50s after the Suez War. Or two, as far as he was concerned, it was not delivered by him or the CIA or anyone of his knowledge of any fissionable material such as plutonium or other material. However, regardless of Angleton's statements, what we do know is that by 1968, the CIA concluded that Israel had gone nuclear and they had somehow obtained enriched uranium. However, in 2012, when the 1986 publication The Israeli Account was declassified, it was discovered that the clear consensus in the CIA was that a uranium manufacturer in Pennsylvania was likely the source of the Israelis' material. This ultimately led to what is known as the NUMEC affair, and from 2009 to 2016, the FBI declassified many documents confirming a sizable amount of enriched uranium was missing. A report was actually submitted to the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy back in 1967, confirming that 260 kilograms of enriched uranium went missing, which is equivalent to $19.5 million at the time. It continues to get so much more shocking and deserves a video of its own. One of the founders of NUMEC, Dr. Zalman Mordechai Shapiro, actually had very close relationships to the Israeli Mossad and officials of the Israeli government. In 2009, an FBI investigation was declassified where a former NUMEC employee saw Dr. Shapiro pacing nervously late at night outside the loading dock. He states that he saw canisters of highly enriched uranium being loaded onto a truck with a shipping destination to Israel. After he saw that, he was actually threatened to keep his mouth shut concerning what he had seen at the loading dock. One last thing I wanted to share regarding the NUMEC affair. 4 Israeli officials actually visited NUMEC in 1968, one of them being Raphael Eitan, who was listed on the official documents as a chemist for Israel's Ministry of Defense. However, 18 years later, an article was published in the Washington Post by Charles Babcock that stated that at the time, Raphael Eitan was a Mossad officer but was listed on the planned trip as a chemist for the Israeli Ministry of Defense. He was actually involved in smuggling nuclear equipment from the United States to Israel with the famous Hollywood movie producer of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Arnon Milchan. I made a video on that last year as well. If you scroll down on any of my socials, you'll be able to find it. Anyway, back to James Angleton. You might be wondering if there are any documented statements from James Angleton himself regarding his relationship with Israel and their development of nuclear weapons. Yes, there is. There was actually a Senate hearing in June of 1975 with James Angleton's testimony that wasn't released to the public until 1995. So much I could get into regarding this 111-page document. Let me know if you guys want me to make a full video on that. What's most pertinent for this video is that the Senate actually asked Angleton about the conversation he had with the journalist Tad Schultz. Remember this document I showed you where Schultz asked Angleton about the CIA assisting Israel in developing nuclear weapons? Angleton responded saying it was essentially correct, however the time frame was wrong and they didn't actually give Israel fissionable material. Well, in the Senate hearing, the committee repeats that entire paragraph to Angleton word by word. Angleton responds to that and says, "I don't follow that at all." Apparently he has no recollection of making those statements. The committee then questions him further. Did you make those 2 corrections regarding the time frame being wrong and the CIA providing Israel with fissionable material? He only responds with the words, "I don't understand what you're saying." The committee then asks him a second time, "Did you make those 2 corrections?" Responds back a second time, seemingly deflecting the question by repeating, "I don't understand what you are saying." Angleton was asked about Israel's nuclear capabilities and how he would handle a situation in which there was a conflict of interest between the United States and Israel. He did give inadequate responses regarding those questions as well. If you want me to go more in detail regarding that, let me know and I'll make another video. That's everything I wanted to share in this video regarding Angleton's role in providing Israel with nuclear weapons development. Also, interesting to note, it was later revealed that Angleton ran a CIA operation known as the Special Investigations Group that even other parts of the CIA didn't know about. The operation highly compartmentalized files related to Lee Harvey Oswald that were ultimately suppressed in the Warren Commission investigating the assassination of John F. Kennedy. On May 11th, 1987, James Jesus Angleton died by cancer at Sibley Memorial Hospital at the age of 69. It was then discovered in a Washington Post article on December 4th, 1987 that the Israeli Mossad threw a secret ceremony for him after his death. Jerusalem mayor at the time stated, "We commemorate a great friend who saw Israel-US relations through their most difficult period in the 40 years of Israel's existence." Angleton's memorial stone is still standing today in Jerusalem.